Hello, my friends. Hope you had a fantastic day or night wherever you are. This week, I'm back with a brand new episode, which I'm going to be talking to Odessa all about marketing, content writing, what to do in an economic slowdown. Should you cut your marketing? Should you just cease to communicate? Or should you continue to move forward regardless of necessarily what's going through? But also, how do we motivate ourselves or lean into discipline to be able to do that? So I now hand over to past me to conduct this interview. Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me. And if you did enjoy this episode and would like to see more like it, make sure to be subscribed. And I'll see you in just a second's time.
So my name is Odessa Sherreard. I'm a content writer who specialises in LinkedIn content, newsletters, blogs and website copy. I've been self-employed for almost 3 years and I help a range of businesses, whether they're small or medium-sized enterprises, to help find their voice online and make sure they are heard and engaging with their target audience.
Fantastic. And content, for obvious reasons, is a very close-knit thing to me. Not just video, but content in general, especially content that does something, right? Because I think a lot of people are in a very interesting time at the moment, is the words I'll use, where people seem to, I don't know whether it's for you, but, and feel free obviously not to share anything that you don't feel comfortable sharing, but I think it's fair to say people have kind of gone into their shells. Things have slowed down. People are really kind of, I hate to say it, but looking after themselves a bit. And of course, that's understandable, right? But I guess it does pose the question, why should we spend money? Why should we look to market? Why should we look to communicate still? Because one could make the argument, right, and say, well, no, people aren't spending money right now. People aren't moving forward right now. Things are difficult right now. Should we still market? Is that the best use of time and energy? I mean, we're here, so we're talking on a podcast, right? So that clearly we both agree that it's a good idea to still articulate what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, I think when you're in a time of recession, when you're in a time of struggle, I think that's the best and most important point in the year. It might be in the period of time. It could even be in your career, to make sure that you are still putting yourself out there. If you know that everybody else is reducing their marketing spend and everybody else is talking less about what they do, or certainly less to a high standard and a high quality, then it makes sense for you to invest more in your marketing to make sure that you still stand out as consistent. Now, it might mean that you need to change the strategy and the means of which you're talking. It may mean you need to be a little bit more clever, or you need to be a bit more strategic with your ability to repurpose content and get more for your money. But absolutely, marketing is one of those things. It's always the first to go, and it's usually the first thing that then impacts the ability to generate leads, the ability to continue making the business move forward and profitable. So the obvious answer for a marketer to say is continue spending on marketing. But I think we're seeing lots of people cutting back before the tax year because of the recession, because of the spring budget. And yet there are still forecasts that say that marketing spends are going up by at least 1.5 times. So I think it's that usual lull that we see at this time of year. But I'm fairly confident to say that businesses who are strategic and sensible and smart with their marketing will find that actually they'll start spending more again, or they'll start reprioritizing it soon.
I think that's a really powerful point, and I think sometimes it's very easy. And I was listening to, I think it was a part of an audiobook yesterday, The Psychology of Money, that I've just tried to build the habit of doing again. And it was talking about like what gets attention and what specifically do we look for, and you know, me to go on a podcast and say we're all doom and gloomed and the world is over, probably going to get it more attention than me saying, guys, this might be a bumpy patch, but actually we're going to be fine, right? And I think sometimes we look as marketers potentially as people who could be slightly more positive, which is great, of course, but that does beg a question, which I wanted to ask you, which is, an important point, I think, for a lot of business owners right now, and it's kind of an elephant in the room to an extent, which is how do you motivate yourself, be highly disciplined, whatever you want to describe it as, to move yourself forward in marketing, right? Because when things aren't working, when things aren't doing the things you need to do, or when curveballs are happening, or things slow down, or etc., 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 it would be very easy for me to go, oh, F it, I'll just go get a job, or F it, I'll just play video games, or F it, I'll just, whatever it is, and not, your response, for my response specifically is work, right? Work on the business, push forward, update the website, create content, continue with the schedule, continue with the plan, etc., etc., etc. But I know that's a commitment I've made to myself, and I know that's really important and really key to my values. So it's still difficult for me, even with that principle, and even with that highly disciplined mind, to say I need to keep up with fitness, even if that's going on a walk, even if that's doing this, doing that, and I need to keep going with marketing. I need to keep going regardless of the other stressful situations I may be under, or the unfortunate real reality, which might be, you know, for us right now, we've got quite a bit later on in the year, but not a lot right now. Of course, if someone's listening to this and we can help, let's have that conversation. Great, fantastic. But what would you say, just to reiterate the question, I mean, how do we tackle that from a mental health principle? Because it's very well, like if we're positive mental health wise and we're like, yeah, let's go, let's do it, fuck it, let's do it, then that's really easy for us to go and do it, right? But in this time where I think people are, I won't go as far to say as they're like concerned or overly concerned, because I don't want to put that into the world and say that's 100% true, because I don't know. But I am getting the vibe that people are like, hold on a sec. Right, whether that's mental health wise or etc., and they've got a lot going on. How do you personally find you push yourself through that, move forward regardless?
So I think well, first of all, for anybody who feels concerned about their positioning, feels concerned about consistency, that's why you outsource it. That's why you ask somebody who this is their job to do, because they will make it their job to get it done. Anybody who's in a position that says, I don't feel up for doing this, I don't know how to be consistent, but I want to grow my business. And I think that's a fundamental difference. But anyone in that mindset who has growth as their aspiration for the year, who is looking to scale, if they themselves don't have the time to do it, but they believe in their strategy, they believe in how they're projecting for their business, that is the time to outsource it. If you, as a solopreneur, and you don't have that growth mindset, if you're not looking to grow the business, if you're just looking to occasionally take a lead, occasionally make a sale, occasionally book in a call and have a retainer client replace somebody that maybe you've lost, you don't have that growth mindset. Therefore, you're not going to show up as consistently, because the driving force for you that will motivate you to succeed is a genuine desire for your business to do well. So on a personal level, I've had lots of things recently that have shifted my focus away from the business. Yes, I'm still showing up consistently. I'm not maybe posting content as much, but I'm still showing up as engagement. I'm still being active in the community that I have built, in the network that I support, because I see the value in keeping a presence of any type. And I think what can be quite easily misunderstood is this idea of consistency is not just broadcasting your message. This is my product. This is my service. It's making sure that you're still adding tangible value to your audience elsewhere. In the comments, if you're having a rubbish day and you've got nothing to post, but you're still active on, say, 20 or 30 other people's pieces of content, you are still being consistent within your marketing strategy. You're taking it from a different angle. So as long as there's some activity, I think that's better than none. And I think that's sometimes, again, what we misunderstand about being present on social media. We think it means that we've always got something to say. And sometimes it's that we need to start contributing back to the platform and keeping those conversations going. So there is nothing wrong if you are having a bad patch for you saying, do you know what? I absolutely need to take a walk from the business. I need to take some time off social media. I need to create that distance. I need to create that space with the intention of returning. What sometimes happens is we leave it open-ended. We've got nothing to work towards. We say we need to take that break, and then there is no benchmark for us to be able to return, and no way of us plotting our ability to progress or to recover to the situation that we need to be at. So it's all a matter of mindset. And I would never say to people, you need to be on social media all the time, because it is hard work. It can be incredibly damaging to mental health if it's not done properly. So take the signal from your own energy levels, take your own attitude towards posting that day into consideration, and be mindful of it. Don't ignore it, but consider it as part of a wider strategy. Your social media presence is not the only thing that you're going to do to market your business. You will go to in-person networking, you will do podcasts, you will do newsletters, you will find other ways of talking about what you're doing. Marketing is a 360 activity with a few slotted in solutions. And I think social media is just one of them. So just be a bit more balanced in your approach, and be reasonable with yourself. If you burn out, you won't be doing anything anyway.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think, sometimes when I work with coaching clients, I ask, what's their context, right? That might be they've just had a breakup, they've just had a bereavement, they've just moved house, they've just had some great news, but etc., right? Whatever their context around their business is, right? Because at the end of the day, solo entrepreneurs or large-scale business owners, we're all still people. We all still have lives outside of business, whether that's a smaller amount of time because you're very focused on your career and very focused on building, or a larger percentage because you're maybe trying to pull away or trying to, spend more time with the family, or etc., etc. But I think it's very important to apply the context and ask yourself every day, firstly, are you in line with your values? Are you in line with what you personally value and what you are going to put first personally for your own physical and mental health? And also, after that, are you really doing your best? Now, sometimes when I say this to people, they think it's a trick question and I'm trying to hook them. I'm not. I'm simply asking you to be honest with yourself and say, are you doing your best? As long as you can always answer that question as a yes, then you're in the position where you're doing the best you possibly can to move things forward. And I think sometimes when we have little downs or we have periods of mental health concern, everyone's way of dealing with it is important, but also personal. Yeah. So I'll give you a very quick example. One of my consistent character traits is attack the problem as fast as possible and try and find a solution as quickly as possible. Because if I can solve the solution that have got a mental health issue about, then I'm not going to have the mental health issue anymore necessarily, right? That doesn't mean I then don't need to step away from it, don't need to spend time fitness, don't need to pay the break, etc., etc. But it's about first allocating and understanding 100% what is the problem, right? And can I fix it, or can I do actions that fix it, right? And then when I exhaust either my energy doing that action or the actual actions I can do at that time, right? So maybe I'm waiting for, I've sent some emails to ask help from clients or whatever it may be, or I've put out some offers, or I've sent enough DMs and I'm burnt out of doing that. Then I just say, okay, well, what is fair for me to ask myself to do now? What's the best thing for me personally to do? Because as you've already said, if you burn out, there's not much point in necessarily overly pushing. But I think it's a very clear disparity to when something bad happens, to take a pause and ask, what is the next most valuable step for you to either A, fix the problem, or B, for you to be in a state to fix the problem? And I think sometimes giving us that space and giving us that time to be able to reflect and be able to adapt what we do and how we tackle it, especially if it's a new potential solution or uncharted waters, which can be very good for you growth-wise, regardless of the outcome, but will push you harder on your mental health, and you will find it more difficult when it comes to your overarching mental health, overarching physical health. So understanding your own psychology in that regard. So, what allows you to reduce your cortisol level? Is it time out of the business? Is it watching something? Is it doing a part of the business that you could describe as grunt work that allows you to take your mind off what you were doing? Is it going to the gym? Is it walking, etc., etc., etc.? But for those who, maybe listening to this and are like, okay, cool, I'm going to do it myself, right? I'm going to start creating writing. I'm going to start articulating. I'm going to start being visible, which arguably is one of the best possible things you can do for your business, period, right? But especially when things are quiet, overarching. And very quickly before I ask a question, I just want to make a point, which is, if you feel like you're the only person who's quiet, reach out to your community, reach out to your network and say, is this just me, right? Or is things slowing down? Because what you'll find is, if you have a strong trust set, as in a trusted people that you can trust their opinion on, they'll just tell you, yeah, mate, it's shit. Yeah, mate, it's slow. Yeah, mate, it's this, that. Or ask yourself, okay, but what price point do they operate in? If they operate at and this isn't to throw shade at anyone, but it's just an understanding, right? If they operate in a lower tier than you and they're busy, then maybe it's actually people are looking for quick fixes that are cheaper, and maybe a solution to your problem, if it is cash, for example, is to create a glam sclam offer that could create a short-term cash flow solution, but also adds you to add value and add leverage points for new clients. But just to reiterate the question quickly, because I think it's important for people to still continue to market whilst they're fixing these problems and being a firefighter. What would you suggest people do if they're looking to either refresh what they're doing, or maybe they've like gone into the, oh my God, I need to focus on my own mental health because this is really bad and I'm going to come back. But how do we start? What do we do?
So I think the most important thing when you're looking to come back, if you've taken any amount of time off from social media, is to ease yourself in with social listening. So for anybody who's not familiar with that as a phrase, social listening is being able to look at the content that's existing within your sector, within the platform, within the people that you respect and you trust, and you would personally enjoy their content, and get an understanding of what angle they're taking, how they're formulating it, what kind of engagement it's getting. Get an idea of what the social media landscape is like first, before you even consider looking at what you want to comment. Again, engagement is one of the easiest things to ease yourself back into. So making comments on other people's content, adding your value there. If there's a post with an idea that you can challenge, then show your expertise in a respectful manner within the comments, rather than writing a whole new post off the back of that conversation. I think we have to be incremental. We need to get a few things done very well, and then add to it, and then look to build on it, rather than trying to hop back into everything and then taking another 2 or 3 months off again in no time at all. Then I would suggest people looking at their content pillars. So understanding the 3 main areas of your business that you need to be talking about. So that could be a new product or offer that you really need to push and you need to get people more interested in. That's something that you can talk about from lots of different angles, therefore it becomes a pillar. You might want to talk about the most commonly asked question. That could be another pillar. It's being able to choose subjects that you won't exhaust yourself on means of writing about it, subjects, subtopics, ways of being able to communicate the same thing. So there's a very clear backbone and strategy to the content you're putting out there, so that anybody joining at any point into your network can see that these are the things that you talk about and that you're able to talk about them in lots of different ways. So establishing those content pillars becomes really important to take away a lot of that, oh my goodness, what am I supposed to write about today? I have no idea, because you already have these set ideas in place. What you could even do is, if you're looking at your content pillars and you are struggling with an idea and you maybe just want to rework a piece, it's looking at, okay, well, what different content types could I use? So it might be that you want to push a particular product and you want to talk about it in this particular way, and you then need a quick piece of content the next week on the same subject. You might decide that you want to put out a poll. You might have, the week before, you might have talked about how much you think people should be investing in their marketing and why marketing is such an important thing to do now. The next thing that you could do is write a poll about how much are you spending on your marketing? How much do you project to be spending on your marketing? Do you think a marketing budget is important for any business of any size? So the same conversation, but taken from a different angle or from a different piece of content or type of content, to keep the conversation going, to get the engagement, but also give you more content to write. Because if you're looking at the comments that people are leaving, and if you're asking questions at the end of your post that give them opportunity to add their own value to it, then you are again creating different types of content off the back of those comments. So it's being intentional, it's being clever, it's being strategic about what you're putting out there, and being aware that it needs to have some kind of return, even if, as I said, it's just a new piece of content for the next week.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think sometimes we overthink it, right? Like for me, something that I've never personally done, and I'll give you an example of today's post, right? I've made kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, things aren't exactly ideal, right, at the moment, but I'd never stray away from that. And that's and the reason why I mention it here is it's really important to make sure that that's in line with what you want to say, right? Mm-hmm. And your values as an individual. Or whatever your brand values are as a brand, if you're a business brand, the same, right? But for me, my business brand and me are identical. So for that, it's very simple. And one of those things that I really value is transparency, honesty, and then also like not beating around the bush. It's not really something I do. So I wouldn't do it in my posting, right? And I think that the key there is to say, if you're going to be able to help a client, you also need to be able to say no to them, right? Because I think sometimes when it comes to a strategic, helpful environment, you need to be able to potentially challenge that client's way of thinking, to say, whether that's through a post, whether that's in a meeting, whether that's on set, whether that's whatever during the project or during the retained service, whatever it may be, because that's actually why they're hiring you. They're hiring you because you are the go-to expert for what you do. They don't necessarily just want a yes man or a yes woman, because they would hire one if they wanted that, right? And again, just my view, but my view from how I work with clients is, look, if you're going to hire me, you trust my view and you trust what I feel is going to be best for what you're trying to achieve, right? And I think sometimes we look at marketing and we stay away, especially at the moment culturally, we stray away from saying the reality, because what if someone doesn't like what we say, right? And I think saying, and again, this is very personal, and it's very important for you personally to make clear with yourself what boundary lines you have for what you are and are not allowed to talk about, like what you're going to allow yourself to talk about and what you're not going to allow yourself to talk about. There's certain topics that, regardless of what I'm doing, I will never let a conversation or never let myself comment on, because that's beyond a boundary line. And in a world where there is a conversation or there is etc. that may lead there, I will always try to either navigate away from it or request that it's removed. And it's not that I'm going to be censoring it. It's because I have a boundary line and I want to respect that boundary line. But I think it's sometimes something that we overlook when we look at our content, because absolutely we need to be value-led. Absolutely we need to be in a position where we're positioning ourselves. But have you found personally that either clients or yourself personally, that maybe it's difficult to come up with those boundary lines?
I think boundaries are a good conversation to have in business at any point, at any size, for any context. I think when you are aware that your integrity is on the line, but you still have bills to pay, but this is your only source of income, but you need to have consistent leads coming in, but you need to be able to afford this, that, and the other. You need to have work and all that kind of thing. I think boundaries, as society as a whole, we are getting better at setting them, but there is a whole, what I believe, generational gap in the ability to set those boundaries. We've become people pleasers, entrepreneurs and self-employed people, probably more than any other group of people, because we're so desperate for that yes. We're so desperate for that deal. And it's only, I see it in people's second and third year of business, when they're more intentional with who they go out for, who they start accepting work from, what services they offer. And there's nothing wrong with being a yes person. There's absolutely nothing wrong with servicing your clients to the best of your ability, providing you've got the capacity to do so, providing it's not outside of your skill set and you can still give a brilliant service to your clients, and providing that it doesn't make you feel like you have personally crossed one of your own boundaries. And I don't think we have this idea of what boundaries should look like. We have an idea of what kind of boundaries we should be setting. I've had a fantastic conversation with a lady called Catherine Dyer, who's the pocket strategist, and she's very clear with her own boundaries. Something she said to me was that boundaries are not for other people, they are for you. We talk a lot about people crossing our boundaries or pushing our boundaries, but they are our boundaries to keep. So if you don't want to work past 5 o'clock, but you keep letting a client call you at 5:30, that is not them overstepping your boundaries. That's you allowing them to push past it. You have to ask yourself why you're allowing that to happen. In fact, it's even worth evaluating whether or not that's a boundary you still value. The boundaries that we keep, the ones that we set, they're going to change over time, because the business or our personal circumstances are going to require us to be that flexible and that agile. Therefore, the boundary that you set now of not working past this certain time, it might be that your schedule changes and that becomes your optimum time to work. So don't be afraid to move them, but that's a you decision. That's a choice for you. And if constantly you're finding that clients are overstepping and you feel personally violated by those actions, that's for you to sort out. That's for you to communicate and stand firm to. If it's not a boundary, don't set it because somebody said that that was their boundary. Where are the reasonable limits with your time? Where are the reasonable limits of your energy? What do you want to be able to get out of that interaction or out of that exchange?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I also think it's a great way I completely agree with what you're saying in the respect to like you have to set them, but then you also have to honor them, because I think that so many times we say, "Oh, my boundaries there, my boundaries this," but what happens when it gets pushed? What happens when it gets tested? That's when it really matters to you, and whether it's actually truly valuable to you. But and I want to quote something here as well, which is, something that I've followed for a lot of my last couple of years in business anyway, has been following the principle around how eager or how excited is a business to work with you, right? Whether that's an individual or a group of people, how excited are they? And this can be true of anything, right? So whether that's working with you, whether that's your friends, whether that's coming on a podcast, whether that's being on the radio, whether that's having sex, whatever it is, right? There's this level of interest, right? And you can clearly see it, right? You can see it in how they react, you can see it how they operate, you can see it, do they follow up and reschedule because life happens, sure, or do they like try and wiggle their way out of it? And I think it's a really important point, because sometimes and personally I always try to work with people who are really, really as passionate and excited as I am about the project, about the idea, about the podcast, about the conversation, whatever it may be. And I try to maybe stay clear through, and by no means am I perfect, because no one is, right? And the concept of perfection doesn't exist. But we can always look at these things in hindsight and say, well, actually, I noticed these things. But some would, I guess, say from that, it's an entitled view for you to say, oh, I'm only going to work with the people that are 100% in, 100% that. But the kind of, I guess, the counterpoint I would argue there is, can you afford to do so right now? Now, you might say, no, you can't. Now, that's okay. That's cool, right? Now, I think we've discussed a lot about, things slowing down, etc. And I think there is a very important point to say you should be able to say no and have that mindset around it. And maybe someone isn't the correct person for you necessarily. But also you have to be honest with yourself sometimes and say, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it you're on the breadline, you need to build the cash flow, whatever. Maybe you got stung for an invoice, whatever it may be, right? Or maybe you've had a bill that's larger than you initially planned. The reality for you isn't the same, right? Because if we're sat here in a completely the world is good phase, then yeah, of course you can say no. But are you really? Would be then the question I ask, because especially as people who, my next question to you is going to be like project work versus retained work, just so you can start thinking about it. But for me, I think it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, should you take the project on that maybe isn't the best fit, but actually gives you some cash to either fix a problem, get ahead, or just put in the bank? Because you don't know where that next paycheck, if you're just project by project, is going to come from. I mean, have you done, like, how does your business work? Do you run project by project? Do you run on a retained basis, etc.? And if you do run retained, what made you make that switch?
So I do both. There are times where the work that I'm doing is purely retainer, and there are times where I take on the odd project. So websites, they're not going to need writing all the time. That's a project piece. Newsletters, content of any source, blogs, they're going to be consistent. You will always need those in your business. So they become a retainer service. The reason that I chose a mix is because the retainer stuff is great, but you do end up falling into a pattern of churning out content. And as somebody who is writing for multiple people in various industries, in various voices, under different guises, it becomes very important to have that creative outlet, to have other means of expressing your talent and your skills and the things that you've learned and that you can do for your clients. So there's nothing wrong with doing purely retainer work. If you've got it, great. There will be times where, yes, you need to boost your cash flow and a project is exactly what you need. Sometimes they will fall in your lap. Sometimes you will actively go out and look for them. I think it's down to each individual to understand what their workload, what their mental capacity is, to understand whether or not they want to take on more work. Obviously, having retainer work is very easy to work with. You know that there is a bill coming in every single month that's going to pay for this, this, and this. So I think everyone ideally would have a preference to work on retainers because, it's that peace of mind. But if you are working project to project, as long as you've got a clear strategy for how you're going to continue building those leads, if you are able to continually go out there and push and find the energy to do it, then, if that's the way that you work, if that's the product that you've designed, the service that you've got, then go for it. There's no right or wrong way of doing it, but there's a slight degree of, when's the next project coming on? When am I going to get it started? Do I have enough cash flow in between? And I think the important thing is analyzing the kind of cash flow that you need and deciding whether or not that's the structure of the business that you want to take. But there is absolutely no right or wrong. It's very dependent on sector. It's very dependent on individual opportunities. You might not want to have a retainer because you want to do project work and then you want to take 6 months off. It's up to you. All I would say is that your marketing has to be one of the consistent things that you continue doing, because it gives you the flexibility then to choose.
Yeah. And I think I guess you could say the golden chalice for me is having enough retained work that isn't a massive pain in the arse with the right people to sustain you, but then have 1, 2, 6, 7, 15, depending on what your profit margin is, projects that are your big hitters, right? That's when you put the savings pot away. That's when you get big chunky money, right? And I think it's about how you strategically plan it and how potentially you look at it. I mean, in an ideal world, of course, you have the both, right? You have them both. But I think it kind of can come down to health of the business, health of the market, health of the economy, etc., etc., etc. Because a retained service is a very different expenditure level. Even if you're a lower price, because you arguably would be, because that's the whole point of it being retained, than if it was project by project. But I think the ad hoc consistent thing, and the thing that I've always followed in regards to motto and ideology, has been, I'm going to treat Brunton Media as the highest paying client regardless of what's going on, regardless of how busy I am with client work, regardless of this and this and this. And what that means is I'm going to put it at not necessarily first every time, but I'm always going to make sure that my finger's on the pulse doing a set of things consistently that will generate me work. So in a world where things are slower, for whatever reason, I know it's a matter of time until they become busy again, because I'm very focused, I know what I'm doing, and I don't sit here and go, okay, cool, I marketed, I got some work, great, we're now going to not market, right? Yes, there's times, unfortunately, due to 1,000 different reasons, why maybe you miss a day, maybe you miss a week, maybe you miss a month, right? Sure, but actually, and this is why I always come back to what I initially started with, which was, are you doing your best? Are you doing the definition of your best with the context that you have access to, right? And this is where the UVU kind of argument or concept comes from, because, and this is going to be my next question, because it's really important to make sure that you're only applying a UVU principle rather than a UV me or UV Sally or UV Nigel or UV Barry, whatever it is, right? Because for me anyway, you're the only one with the advantages that you had, you're the only one with the disadvantages you've had, you're the only one with the story you've had, you're the only one with the context you've had. But did you always have potentially a UVU mindset, as in the past you versus the current you, moving towards the future you, or were you potentially into because I think there's a trap with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've fallen into it many times as well, where you look at your competitors and go, well, they're really busy, or they're really busy on social media, or they're clearly really busy with work, or etc. And you go, well, why aren't I?
So I can be extremely competitive by nature. I learned this a long time ago when I played a lot of sports, and I found that the mindset that you get into, this very lone wolf, I can do this by myself, I've only got myself to compete with because I want to be better with whoever else is out there. It can be very limiting as a mindset. It can also drive you to burnout. It can overstress you. The minute you start feeding into your competitive nature and you start worrying about what other people are doing, is the moment you completely almost kill off the joy that you have for what you're doing. You kill off the creative spark. Some people love that kind of pressure. Some people love that kind of mindset. It really is the motivating force for them. And, if those people know how to channel that well, then absolutely great. That's an incredible mindset to be able to tap into. For myself, I feel that you focus so much on other people, and of course we are only human, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes unless you're looking at Companies House and you've got details of their income and outgoings. You have absolutely no idea what the true reflection of their situation is. We can only go by what we're able to see. And I think when you take a community mindset, you start looking at people who are doing well and saying, that's great. Do you know what? I'm really pleased for them. I'm really happy. What can I learn from their experiences? What can I ask them that I could maybe doing differently? It's very easy. And this is, I find, quite ironic. We're quite capable of judging people from a distance, but we're too afraid to ask about that reality. We don't know them well enough, which means we can't really judge their situation, because if we were friends, we'd be able to ask. And if we are friends and we do feel that comfortability of being able to ask them, then what are the questions that we're actually looking for the answers to? We can't just go by those visual appearances. I mean, there are lots of people in my space who've said that they've done really well, but you continue that conversation with them and they'll also tell you that they've lost 2 or 3 clients as well. There is this half a story, this show reel that we see on social media, which makes us assume that everyone is always doing better than us. And yes, I believe compete with the self that you were yesterday to be better in the future, of course. I think it's important to look at self-development and self-improvement and see whether or not you can take steps on your own. It's important to look at your competitors to see, is there something they're doing that you're not? Is there something they're talking about or not talking about, for that matter, that you could then find a gap in the market? You know, competitor planning, SWOT analysis, these kind of things, they've been part of marketing as much as what do I want to talk about, what's on my agenda. And we go back to social listening and understanding the conversations that are already out there. So I think there needs to be a healthy balance of how much we look outwardly and how much we look inwardly, because it's very easy then to become so focused on yourself and what you want to achieve and what you think needs to be spoken about that, again, you lose touch with your audience, with your competitors, with where you sit in the market. So for me, the kind of logical approach that I always take, or I've been told to take as well from other people, is how much do I need to earn? What does that look like in clients at the current price point that I've got? Am I at that capacity? Where am I going to find these people? What do I need to do? And make your plan based on what you need out of the business. It has to be the business that serves your life, not you serving the business. And you need to have that kind of degree of separation and that degree of control over your schedule as much of the business. And that's really hard to achieve. I don't think I meet many entrepreneurs and business owners who can say that they've got that nailed. And the ones that do have really clear boundaries. They have a very clear plan. They work with a coach. They work with a team. They've got their structure. They're not afraid to say when things aren't working and try something different. They're not afraid to take a risk, and they are willing to see how things pan out. And I think it's down to each individual. You can develop a different mindset, but it might be that you are then trying to develop into something that doesn't light you up, that doesn't feel aligned with your values. And I think there's a danger of you running a business for other people and their opinions, as opposed to running the business that you actually want to run.
No, I completely agree. And I think, for me, a lot of what I've done in the last couple of years has made sure that I'm collaborating with people who happen to do the same thing as me, because I don't believe ever that we're going to do it the same, right? Regardless, right? Yes, we might use the same lens. Yes, we might use the same camera. Yes, we might use the same microphone. Yes, we might use the same tripod, but we're not going to tackle the project identically. We're going to do it the way I do it, or you do it, etc., depending on the project, of course, right? We'll tackle it our way, right? And for some clients, that'll be better. For other clients, that'll be worse. But I think for me, it's about having that network, having that community, having those people who you can go to either for your own mental health to say, look, is it quiet? What's going on? Are you busy? What am I doing wrong? Have I done something wrong? Am I doing something wrong with my marketing? To have that soundboard, right? Because as solo entrepreneurs, it is lonely, right? And with the nicest way possible, your family members, your friends, etc., unless they run businesses, they're never going to fully understand it. They'll do what they can and they'll listen and sure, fine. And that's lovely and that's great and that's very fluffy, right? But they're never going to fully understand it because they're not in the trenches every day with you,
No.
right? They just see your mental breakdown. They just see you being really stressed. They just see you not showing up and being present in your family or as your friend, etc. And also, in the nice way possible, if they have a job, they don't have the same skill set as you. And again, this isn't to mock anyone, but they don't have the same skill set as you to be able to create income out of thin air, which is basically, in a nutshell, what we do as business owners, right? In a nutshell, as marketers and salespeople and blah, 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 we create income out of thin air. To the people who don't know what we're doing and don't understand the nuts and bolts, that's what we're doing, right? We're creating it out of thin air because all they know is, I have a job, I get paid. Great, cool, fantastic, thank you very much, right? But if you're an entrepreneur, you literally create revenue out of thin air because you create the job yourself, whether that's from marketing you've done, whether that's through reaching out, and we've talked about some of these strategies already today. But one of the final questions I wanted to ask you is, for those who are maybe new in business, right? How do we go about creating this network, this connection, this community? Because it's, and I hate to say it, it's becoming a little bit of a buzzword, the whole let's build community thing. It is a little bit, right? How do we do it? Where do we start? Where do we if someone's listening to this, they got 40 minutes in, they're like, okay, community is clearly the thing I need to do.
I think to reiterate the point, your community that you build around you, that network of business owners, of entrepreneurs, of businesses, of people you used to work with, of people that you want to work with, that ever-changing group of people that you take on your journey is going to be one of the most important things that you invest in. You will invest your time. You will jump on one-to-ones with people. You will sit in webinars. You will attend LinkedIn live show. You will record podcasts. You will jump into somebody's DM because they've been quiet. You will be an active participant in that community that you are attempting to build. There are lots of people who assume that you can be a passive member, and because you're connected with somebody, that's all you need to do. Send a connection request and hey presto, you're in their network. There is so much more required. I'm part of quite a few networking groups. I've made my own network and my own community around me. When things get quiet, we talk about it, we're honest about it. You've got more eyes on the ground, more people looking for opportunities. I'm part of a group, the Creative Collective, which is a fantastic bunch of creatives from all sorts of disciplines of marketing or all different means of the creative industry, videographers, content writers, voiceovers, all sorts of people attend those meetings. And what you don't see behind the scenes is individuals checking up on others, having regular one-to-ones to make sure that no man is left behind, making sure that we've got a WhatsApp chat that's active, that people are contributing to because they want to, because we're growing a warm community of like-minded people who similarly want to help each other. And it can feel very attractive to be part of some of these massive groups that are well publicized, well supported, because the mentality is if there's more people, there's more opportunities. But that only happens when you are spending those hours with individuals. When you message somebody at 10 o'clock at night and say, you've been really quiet, or that post I read, are you okay? It's remembering to be human, remembering to be people, remembering that it took a village to raise a child, and therefore it takes a village and a community to support a business, to grow something that you can be proud of, that supports your family. And I think we found ourselves more connected than ever before, and yet more disconnected than we've ever seen. It's become so much easier to retreat into your own bubble, your own place of safety, to batten down the hatches, pull up the drawbridge and survive on your own. And I think what we need to start doing is being proactive networkers who actually have an interest in fostering relationships and friendships that can suit our business, can help others, and can create opportunities for collaboration. And you can only do that when you are posting, when you're commenting, when you're in the DMs, when you're going to networking events, when you're putting yourself out there. You will not create a community of active people willing to support you if you don't contribute. I have spent thousands of hours networking since I became self-employed almost 3 years ago, literally thousands. there is not a person in any industry that I could not recommend you connecting with or talking to. There isn't a person that I don't know through somebody else, or there's not another connector that I can speak to and say, do you know this person? Do you have this opportunity available? I think we need to understand that it's important and it takes time. You will not grow an active community that gives back if you're not actively being able to show your hand and say, I'm here for you too.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important place to end and a really important thing for the audience to reflect on, because, and that's why I didn't interrupt you, because I think sometimes in business, especially when things get hard, we look completely fairly to ourselves, right? We're like, I'm screwed. I'm up the river without a paddle, whatever you want to call it, right? But I think something which I've always been a massive advocate for and a massive believer of is what I call community karma, right? You can call it what you like, right? But in crux, what is it? In crux, it's the value you've added across years that isn't measurable, that isn't seeable, as in, I added value, someone then got a call, then they booked me for a job, right? That's tangible, that's trackable, right? Someone watched a video but didn't comment or like or interact with it, but they took value from it, or they got a smile from it, or that really added to their day, right? That's added a 0.1 in community karma for you, right? And potentially when you send, I'll use an example you send that message at 10 p.m. Hey, you've been really quiet. What's going on? You good? Like, what's happening? I'm here to listen, etc. That's community karma, right? To an extent, because you're going to add, and you shouldn't do it in thinking it. If you want to gamify it, then sure, do it as the plus one, right? Cool. But that shouldn't be your reasoning. Your reasoning should be, I care about this human being. I want to make sure they're good. Da, da, da. But I think it's a really important principle to consider, because eventually what ends up happening is you can then build, and when you have a need, right? Like, you've been screwed for an invoice, you need to build cash flow quickly, whatever it is, you can then go to the people you have good community karma with and cash that karma in, right? Now, that sometimes might mean literally, because if you need to generate cash flow, you will need it to be literal. In other points, it might be, hey, I'm really struggling with this project, I'm really struggling with this, I'm really struggling with whatever it is happening in my life. Can we jump on a call and hash it out, right? Yeah. And I think that's a really important element. But for those who, want to maybe start that community build with you, want to have that conversation with you, or maybe has taken something from it that's like, actually, yeah, I need her in my network, I need her in my business. How do they do that? How would they reach out to you? How's best to connect with you?
The best place is LinkedIn. It's where I spend the predominant amount of my time. It's where I've built my network and my community. And there have been, for anybody who's still a bit fluffy on this opinion, there has not been an occasion in my time whilst on this platform where we're supposed to talk about business that I haven't had a personal conversation with somebody, because we all need to talk. We've all got things that we need to share. We've all got stories to tell. And I think you just have to believe in the possibility of things being okay when you lean on other people. As a species, we've always worked in this community way, and there has never been a time where I've struggled and I haven't had someone to call on, or I haven't had somebody volunteer. At the moment, where I know where I want to be, or I've got growth plans, there are conversations that I know I can have. If I get to the point where I have headspace, there are programs I can co-write with people. There are opportunities out there, and they only come from conversations where you're switched on to the needs of the person you're talking to, the needs that you bring yourself, and where you want that relationship to sit. There are some people who will be connectors. There are some people who are just going to be your friendly chat that you'll never get business from. It's important to invest in all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think tackle every conversation not with the eyes of, how can I leverage this connection to make more money? How can I add value to this person? Because, and if you're going to do it for no other reason than just being a nice human being, number one, that's probably a good idea. But also number two, consider what that means when they talk about your personal brand or your business brand, right? Because, Colton, I'll use myself as an example. Oh yeah, Colton really helped me with XYZ. Oh, Colton keeps me in the loop about video as it's updating and changing and adapting and da-da-da-da. And then they'll say it in a room that you're not even part of at some point.
Exactly.
And someone will go, who the fuck's this Colton kid? Right? Or whoever, right? And
Happens all the time.
and it's not meant to be talking about me. I use me as an example because it's easy, but it is meant to be, this is how momentum's built. And I think the whole point of marketing is to build momentum towards how you then grow midterm and long term. Sure, right? That requires a sustainable business, that requires sustained cash flow to survive. Sure, fine. But actually, the more important elements for any business right now, if you can survive this period of concern, whatever you want to call it, wherever you want to put your finger, wherever you, etc., that's up to you, right? Knock yourself out. If you can survive this will future-proof your business for a very long time, because you are going to gain the skills to be able to become a better operator. It's not about all fluffy this, you got lots of money, you got this, you got that. Sure, that will come. But the key will be, you'll be a different person from when it started to when it ended, because you will have had to develop the skills to become better at operating a business, which in turn means when things are good, right, and when there's loads of work, you're going to take those opportunities. You're going to have built that karma. You're going to have maybe scaled that team. You're maybe going to actually be tangibly better at your job, right, or better at marketing as a whole, right? But for those, as a final thought, who have got this far in the video, if you were going to give advice to someone starting on their marketing journey, whether that's coming back or actually just beginning, what would you say?
Get started. Get started. Do it now.
Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this episode. If you did and would not like to miss next week's interview, where we're going to be talking about how you can create demand rather than serving the market demand, as always, then make sure to be subscribed to the channel, and I will see you very, very soon.